Welcome to the Investor Fuel Real Estate Investing Show, where I interview the nation's top real estate entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and other amazing entrepreneurs to help educate and inspire you to take your business and your life to the next level. My goal is to add tremendous value to you during every single episode of this show. If you get value, I'd love it if you subscribe on your favorite podcast player, subscribe on YouTube, and my very favorite, please share this with your community so we can impact even more entrepreneurs. Let's start today's show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Today, I'm joined by Tyler White. We're going to be talking about a couple of data nerds here. We're going to be talking about how to get the most out of your data. Just a couple of little teasers here. All data is not equal. And, just because you have a list doesn't mean it's the best list. And there is no best one list. Like, it's a combination of a lot of things. So we're going to go deep on data today, really how to get the most out of it. And quite frankly, a lot of your competitors don't know how to use it either. So if you listen to the show, we're going to give you the recipe for how to do more deals by using data properly. So Tyler, welcome to the show, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate it.
Good to see you. We were talking for almost a half hour. I was like, we better record this thing because we're like, there's a lot of good conversation going on. And sometimes before I even start recording a podcast, I'm like, and sometimes our guests say it too. They're like, man, you should have just recorded the past half hour. Like, that would have been the show. But
it should just be one long recording because some of the best things happen when you're not actually talking about the topic.
Yeah, that is true. Truthfully, I say this all the time. I say it fairly commonly. That's why I do the podcast, because it's like the back room stuff, the before and after the podcast when we're talking, just like there's so many great nuggets comes out, and sometimes opportunities between us and things like that. But really excited to have you here and excited to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is data. So
That's
so
great.
hey, before we jump in, you have a tremendous background with a lot of different companies in the data space, and you've seen amazing evolution. And at some point during the show today, I want to talk about where you think it's going, because it's kind of like AI. Like, we're at the infancy of like how to use this stuff, and it'd be interesting to even get some thoughts on where you think we're going with data and AI kind of combined. Don't want to steal any thunder here, but before we start that, maybe tell us about your background.
Yeah, no, I've been in the data industry, especially real estate data specifically, for a little over 18 years now. I started back in 2007. And it was funny. I started as customer service, right? Like, I got into the space just needing the job and needing to make a certain amount of money. And I was in customer service, and over the years grew to love real estate data. Prior to this, my favorite job was bartending. So mixing and making things that people enjoyed, right? I love to make a drink that doesn't exist and give it to somebody and have them like it, right? And especially when they pay for it. And then evolving that into, kind of getting access to information and data and creating things from data, because there's so many things that are captured that is just black and white, right? Like bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, purchase date, all that stuff is normal. But when you then can create things from what you see that's not actually there, like, absentee owners, like that's not something that's identified. Tired landlords, that's not something that's identified. One of the things that I was able to create in my past was zombie properties, right? Like, it was not an existing thing, but getting access to the data and being at Realty Track, it was a Halloween episode of where we were able to take properties that were facing foreclosure and identified as vacant. Hey, let's call them zombies because they're falling apart. And now that's a coined term across the country. It's something that people are now have TV shows about. I met a guy named Dolmar Cross who basically, talks specifically to that, or, shows people that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So going from there to First American and working with the real estate data providers, to then PropStream, and then now back to Connected Investors, where I am focused on rebuilding the business and creating it as a software product versus what it was of where it was a social product. And the software product has some social components to it, which are really cool and unique to Connected Investors. But the primary aspect of it is the data and the utilization of the data and interpreting it. So it's been a long ride for sure.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, like there's a couple things that I want to talk about today. Like, one of the things that I mentioned to you, I've said this phrase many times over the years, is like caveman with laser gun. And so when I joined the real estate investing industry, it was even more of the Wild West than it is today. Like, back in 2008, so 17 years ago was even more of the Wild West than it is today. It's becoming a little more refined. But at the time, there were no CRMs. There was nobody really using data other than like, the people that would go to the county courthouse and pull probates physically or pull something. But anybody that I know that was doing things like that, they pulled one list, right?
Yep.
They were an expert at the one thing.
Yep.
And, I know that you agree with this too, because, we do some of the similar things. We have Investor Machine on our side, and you've got Connected Investors and a lot of other data companies you've worked for, where data, any list is just an ingredient. If you think of like a recipe to make bread or to make something, right? It's one ingredient, and a little pinch of this or a handful of that makes a difference, right? It's like
For
you
sure.
could make disgusting bread or you could make great bread. And so I think that's where a lot of people go wrong is they assume that more of something is necessary is always better, and it's not necessarily true. It's like you need a little bit of this and a little bit of that in everything. So let's talk a little bit about like maybe some of the common mistakes that you see investors using where they have access to some data, some list of some sort, and they think they have the holy grail. But if they just had a little sprinkle of that, it would be so much better.
Yeah, the biggest thing to think about is, accuracy is important, obviously. You need to make sure you're targeting the right
Yeah.
people who actually own the home. You need to make sure that you're targeting people who actually had, the situation occur. But they're all situations, right? Anything from pre-foreclosure to pre-probate to probate to, expired listings. These are all situations. And what so many people focus on is they focus on the one element itself and they forget about everything else and they just get a list of expired listings. If you think about it, it's kind of like chasing an ambulance. You're looking at the signal flare in the air that everybody else can access to, but you're not really creating something that is of a motivation beyond that one situation. And
Right.
that's kind of what data gives you that opportunity to do. And that's what
Yeah.
something I've been doing for, this 18 years of my career is focusing on taking all the elements of data to create something of value.
Yep.
So being able to take, length of ownership, available equity, occupancy, distance from property, all that stuff. And at Connected Investors, one of the things that we focused on was creating a scoring system that helps you take any list you build and identify the highest motivations that you should start with first. Like you can always send a letter out to everybody at one time. That's easy to do because you just put them all in, you pay the postage, and boom, they all get delivered because there's a bunch of mail carriers out there sending the mail out. But you yourself as your business owner can only proactively engage and like nurture and directly communicate with one person at a time. And so as a business owner, you have to make sure that you're starting with the ones that are going to get you the best ROI.
Hmm.
And the other thing that you have to understand is that it's not just about getting somebody where if they're facing foreclosure, they have to sell. Yes, they're motivated and they're likely to, but again, you're still having to build the trust with them to make them want to sell to you and not the next guy who's going to be knocking on that door too.
That's right.
So it's all about taking the data that you're getting, compiling it together to create this audience, and then it's all about nurturing. It's staying engaged, staying on top, staying consistent. This is the one thing I see so many people do differently that is a problem of where they send one marketing collateral out and then they change it because they go, oh, I didn't get a good enough response. And they're changing too much.
Yeah.
And the brand is lost. And then the person who's getting it sees a new business and a new business and a new business. And they're not realizing it's the same entity or the same person reaching out saying, oh, I remember them. Maybe now I should call them. Because if
Yeah.
you think about it, it's kind of how we're programmed as people is that we follow up with what we remember and what resonates with us. And so being able to take data and information and tie it into, what is their situation that they're in, so that way I can at least be responsive to that, kind of situation should increase my ROI. The collateral that I'm sending or what I'm communicating with should be reflective of that with my brand as the center, so that way they remember me
Yeah.
and that engagement stays consistent.
Yeah. One thing that I know to be true, and I've talked about it a fair bit, is we're generally marketing to people that have been distressed for years and maybe decades. Like everybody listening to this, any pro level investor has bought a house hasn't been updated in 10, 20, 30 years. It's like somebody moved into it in the 60s and it still has shag carpet. It's like falling apart. They just couldn't afford to keep it up, and they just gave up a long time ago. But marketers will think like, "Well, I'm gonna go try something a couple times, if it doesn't work, then I'm gonna definitively say that doesn't work." And I'm like, "You're marketing to somebody that's been procrastinating for decades. Why would
Hmm.
they make the decision today?" Like, you have to
Exactly.
keep tapping them on the shoulder, and, I usually give the analogy of, I think a lot of people will get this too, we get, flyers in the mail like all the time for tires and mattresses. And like, how often are you buying tires or mattresses? Like every 5 years, or like, more than for mattresses. But
Yeah, yeah,
they just keep hitting you with it because they know like eventually you're gonna say, you know what? I need some new
exactly.
tires, and man, I keep getting this from the same place. They must be good,
Exactly. It's
just
not
go
like
to
if you
that place.
just bought a car, you're not going and looking for new tires
Right.
because it doesn't matter. And, again, that's where data comes in.
Yeah.
Like, when you think about people who've owned homes for a longer period, they're more likely to sell than a property who's just got bought. A property that's currently vacant, if it's been owned longer than somebody who just bought it that's vacant, again, those scores evaluate, right?
Yeah.
The thing that you just mentioned too that's so funny is about the CRMs, right? So back in the day, CRMs weren't really a big thing. Like big companies like, the First Americans of the world used a CRM because they were sending out hundreds of thousands of letters to their clients. It was a client-based thing. And, now like the ability to nurture somebody is something that people are still learning because pre CRMs, it was a six and done method, right? Like that was the standard. I would try to market to them six times and then I would throw them away. And then I would
Mhm.
go get another list and then I would market to them six times and throw it away.
Yeah.
But with the databases like First American or Connected Investors, having the ability to get that data on a regular basis updated because we're collecting that data on a regular, interval, and knowing that they still own that property that hasn't sold, they haven't taken on a mortgage to refinance the property. There's all these things that can happen that make them more or less likely to sell. And
Yep.
we are putting all that stuff into the system to allow users to target that kind of stuff, which is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. The other thing, that I know is common is people like before you and I, this is we had a separate conversation before we started today about LASIK surgery, right? And I've actually used that as an example before of a lot of, you certainly you see it in like free Facebook groups and stuff like that. People are like, who has the cheapest data? Where can I get the cheapest skip tracing? Like, where can I was like, are you going to do like, if you had LASIK, would you get like buy one, get one free? Like nobody's looking for a deal on LASIK because I just like, give me the best. Like I want the best.
Exactly.
And all
Exactly.
data is not equal, and I'm probably not, I'm sure that I'm not the only one that gets all sorts of DMs on Instagram and Facebook from people like some overseas person that's trying to sell me data that they pulled. It's like, I don't know where that even came from, right? And so, I think there's a lot to be said for, I'm not saying go spend the most on data, and
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
every data provider has been beat up on pricing over the past few years, so the kind of consumer has won, but be willing to pay a little bit more for data than some list that you don't even know where it came from, because I can promise you when you buy that, like it happens to me all the time. I get texts daily for, selling a house. But sometimes I get texts, certainly every month, at least a few times from some house I haven't owned in years. I'm like, who is selling this data, or where are they getting this data? Because I know that's somebody that got a quote cheap list, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Well, they're
3 years
out
old.
there.
Or
Yeah,
some
and
investor
what's
that bought it and they think, well, I'm just going to use this list forever. I don't need to really refresh it. But that's just not true.
exactly. And that's kind of one of the things is that you can get data, and when you get it and load in your CRM, you now have static information. It's not
Yep.
updated. And that's why so many of the companies that are providing this type of service, because again, Connected Messages isn't the only one that's out there. PropStream is one of them. Deal Machine is one of them. Batch Leads, which PropStream just recently acquired. We're all in the same space of creating access to data. The the true aspect of accuracy is being able to see it real time and knowing like it's being updated. When you get a list from somebody, you don't know where they're getting it. You have no clue if they
Right.
just had it and they haven't touched it and they're just saying, yeah, here's some pre foreclosures. And then you go market to them. Unless you're going and researching them, if you're researching them, you should just pull it yourself. Like there's no point. People would always say, oh, I could go to the county and collect the data myself. It's free. Yeah, but you got to go there. You got to
All
go
right.
get it. You got to
Put your
go
time work.
access the
Yeah.
information. But then do you even know what property it is until you then go to the assessor and have to look it up? And then you got to go and get the mortgage information. You got to get the value information. You got to go establish equity. You got to find out if there's additional liens. There's so much stuff that needs to be able to make an informed decision versus being able to just spray and pray and hope that you get a
Yeah.
lead that you like.
Yeah.
And conducting research is a big part of investing, right? Like getting somebody to call you is one thing. That is hands down super important. I totally agree with that because you can't buy anything if nobody's selling, right? But once you get that offer, you need to have accurate information to make sure that you're making a decision. And connected investors, which again, one of my specialties has been taking a lot of data, putting it in a way that makes you allow to, or allows you, the user, to make quick decisions based on what you see and find levers that you can pull to negotiate better deals,
Hmm.
right? Data is so powerful when you're making decisions because you're informed. You know, hey, this person has a lien. Okay, they have motivation. There's reasonings behind it. Oh, they've been in default for the last 6 years. Oh, they're not, they were in default but aren't anymore because they refinanced and now they're trying to sell their home. So I do at least still have this idea that something went wrong and now they want to sell.
Yeah.
Like I have things that I can talk to them about and look at as I'm talking to them. Like
Right.
that's what's huge. And the biggest thing that Connected Investors has done is comping. Comping, as you know, is the hardest thing for an investor to do because it takes experience. It takes time because you have to sift through data and find the right property of what is the value and what is it comparable to this one or that one. And all these companies that are out there provide what's called hard-coded filtering, right? You go in and you say, I'm looking at 123 Main Street and I want to pull comps. And what they do is they just say, okay, give me all the properties that sold in the last 12 months. Give me all the properties that are within a half-mile radius. Give me all the properties that are plus minus 30% square feet, right? And they go, here's your data. And you have this massive list of maybe 15, maybe 50 records. And you have to sift through to say, okay, this one's a 1 bedroom higher, this one's 1 bedroom lower, this one's 2 stories, this one's 1 story. And you're trying to sift it to get it down to what are true comps, right? And it takes hours to comp properties accurately and well, or you're just throwing numbers out.
Yeah.
And you could lose your shirt. If you don't get your numbers right, you can really cost you a ton of money. You could also leave money on the table if you're comping to sell it, right? So the biggest thing that Connect Investors did is we actually took the scoring into that equation and now have what's called a comp score. So the brand new investor can run comps instantly with confidence and know that they're accurate and look at the top comps that are right there because the other companies, when they have those hard coded filters, they are like leaving off that property that was 1 square foot higher than that 30%, one day beyond that 12-month period,
Right.
0.001 mile further than what that 0.5 mile radius was. You're losing that stuff. We take all of it into consideration, score it, give you the top 10, and then give you the remaining 40 that, so we're giving you 50 total comps with the highest accuracy based on the score. And that seasoned investor now takes those hours worth of labor and effort and get it done in seconds.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what data does. It gives you the ability to take all that information and make the job easier, make it smarter so you can just get the deal closed.
Yeah, that's great. So with AI is everywhere right now, but I think we all still agree it's still kind of at its infancy, right? And I generally think that the probably not data companies like you guys, but a lot of real estate investors are typically kind of late to the party with tech. They're usually a few years behind a lot of other industries. Like from a real estate investor standpoint, not
I don't
necessarily the
think
provider.
so anymore.
No.
I don't think
Okay.
so anymore because, the amazing things that I'm seeing with investors doing now, again, there's probably an age barrier there, no
Yeah.
offense. But there's age barriers of where the younger generation are trying to do things easier, right? And they're looking at technology to do it for them. And so I've talked to so many investors now that are using AI to, you know, look at their data and identify which leads they should target, look at the automated automations that they run. So it's like sends out the campaigns, it does the creative or the collateral that they want crafted. It's doing, like, these companies are building automated AI responses with texting. So it's like you send out a text that says X, and then when they're replying back, they're talking to the AI.
Hmm.
Like, you don't even have to talk to people anymore. A buddy of mine just built a business that I thought was amazing, that now more and more are happening. The company's called Dial Zara. It's an inbound AI assistant. He built it for real estate agents to help them so that when they're on the listing and they get a phone call, they don't miss the call. And
Hmm.
will literally talk you through everything about the weather, about the day, about, the listing that you have, tell them about other listings that are available. It'll then book an appointment or do a live transfer. So it's
Wow.
literally, you have no idea you're talking to a machine, and you're talking to a machine.
Yeah, voice agents are going to be pretty amazing. I mean, we're at the infancy for all this stuff, right? So let's talk a little bit about where you think this is going. I mean, I think people that can um combine data and manipulate it, and I say manipulate it in a way to like mix it up and really kind of understand what that story that's telling, right? Like you guys, um and a lot of people are competing in that space, right? They just keep getting better and better and better. So at some point, is everybody just the same? I don't think that's true, but like, where are we going with data? And then let's talk about where are we going with AI and data, because it feels like we're in the Wild West again.
It is, because again, AI is what you put into it, right? So like, you have to teach it what it is that it's supposed to provide. And so depending on who's teaching it, depending on what goes into it, is what you're going to get out of it. Right. I think there was, something of Gronk, mentioned that it was citing Elon's posts, right? Like, that's the accuracy that it's getting, right? You only get out of it what gets fed into it. And so depending on the content of what you're gathering and what you're using, that's what it's going to be. So, Connect Investors is focusing on building AI to interpret data,
Mm,
interpret information, help summarize it. Because again, the struggle that so many people have is analysis paralysis. I'm going to look at a ton of information. And yes, I can formulate my opinion, but I have to analyze a lot of stuff to then formulate that opinion. Or I can know that I'm an investor looking to do XYZ. I'm going to take that information and then summarize it for them based on that output. Right.
mm,
So that's where I think things are going in terms of interpreting data. Right now, everybody's trying to create the natural language search, right? I'm looking for this, that matches that, that's all of this. And it's just being able to verbalize it. I don't know anybody who's ever been able to get on a phone and talk to the voice assistant, and tell it what they're looking for. It is the hardest thing to do. And maybe that's just me, but whenever I'm on, like, with Verizon and they go, in a few words, tell me what you're looking for and what we can assist you with. I'm like, I don't know, because it's like my TV's doing this and my phone's doing that.
right.
And like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, how do you expect someone to be able to describe what they want when it's not clear? It's
Yeah.
also not clear of what you actually have that can provide to them. So I think list building is still always going to stay filter based, because it shows them what you have. It gives them the ability. The AI to list building is going to be us taking that information and crunching it to find more ways to find motivations. What's happening in the market? What's changing in the market? What can we show our user to make it better?
Yeah.
Right? Make them make decisions faster. Make them know how to identify things that could get deals done easier. Being able to find the things that they're looking for so they don't have to go look for it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
One of the things that has been an eye opener for me over the past few years with Investor Machine, our company, which is very data centric as well, is we made assumptions 5 or 6 years ago when we started about like, hey, a probate is worth this score or whatever,
Mhm.
and then only to find later that it's like the quality of that data differs by county. Right, it's crazy. It's like, wow, this is less important in this market than that market, and we were kinda doing it one side. I mean, at the time, we thought we were cutting edge, I mean, 5 or 6 years ago, and now it's like, wow, like, just some of the stuff that we're able to do now, and the correlations between data too. I think that's one of the interesting things is we were talking about this ahead of time. I know people from 15 years ago, 17 years ago, whatever, that were, like, the expert at probates, but they would go to the county courthouse, or they had some ground game where they're like, "Hey, I have a group of, like, stay-at-home moms, in the afternoon
Yep.
they go to the county courthouses all over town and they pull probates, and I'm like a probate expert, and then I do a handwritten letter because it's a probate or whatever. And now it's like, well, there's thousands of data points, and one of the things that's become interesting to me, and I'm sure you too, you know this now. This will be obvious for you, is the derivatives of data. Like, it's not just I have this list and I have that list. It's like the way you combine things is every bit as important as kind of going back to this example of a chef with a recipe of like a little sprinkle of that or like a handful of that,
Yeah.
and just how they kind of work together is pretty amazing.
Well, that's why, like, again, list stacking is the industry term that everybody uses, right? Like, I'm going to get a pre-foreclosure list, I'm going to get an absentee owner list, I'm going to get a vacant property list, and I'm going to mash them together and see which record or which property is on the most lists, right? And that's the more motivation, right? And that's what they do.
Yeah.
And you go and acquire all these different lists and you do that kind of thing. But what we've done at Connected Investors is we take all of that list stacking concept and we put it into our score. And so when you look at your vacant list, you're already looking at the vacant properties that are the most motivated, and the stacking is already done. So you're seeing that score of reflective of if it's got a foreclosure, if it's vacant, if it's been owned for 20 years, like everything is there equated to that score. So
Mm.
now that you have your vacant list, you know where to start to get your fastest ROI on your vacant list.
Yep.
Then you go and pull a pre-foreclosure list, and you don't have to merge them together anymore. They're already done. You just market to the situation based on what you're targeting. And what we focus on is we say, okay, target the situation that you specialize in, right? The situation is pre-foreclosure. If you're a pre-foreclosure specialist, your messaging is, compassionate. You know how to get them to respond to you. If you're a vacant specialist, like people who have just properties sitting there empty, and you know how to handle that and you know how to respond to it, you market to them very differently. And that's what it's all about. It's taking the list that you're building, marketing to the situation, knowing that you are marketing to the right people. Because back when we talked about the biggest thing about it is the data's right. The data's accurate. As long as you're going to a right source that knows pulling the data, and you can verify, and you can check that, hey, this is what they do. So they're not going to just give me garbage, because they are literally making it accessible to hundreds of thousands of people.
Hmm.
Right.
Yep.
So I have a reputable source. They're doing it. If I come across problems, I'm going to address it to them. If they're responsive to it and they can fix it, fantastic. If they say, sorry, we don't do it, then they're not collecting the data.
Hmm.
If you come and complain to somebody and say, hey, I don't, this is incorrect. And they say, oh, okay, sorry, there's nothing we can do about it. And you don't see it change within a week, they don't collect their data. That means they're getting it from somebody else and they have no control over it.
Hmm.
When you go to a company and say, oh, thank you so much for letting us know, we're going to get that updated, that's because they own it and they want to make sure it's the best. And
Yeah.
that is
Wow.
one thing with Connect Investors, is we want to make sure our data is good, because we are collecting it, we are sourcing it, we are providing it, and it is something that is, ongoing, which is great. But one thing I will say about public record, and you'll appreciate this one, is public record data is inherently flawed, incomplete, untimely, and inaccurate, but it's all that exists. If we didn't have public record data, nobody would know who owned a property. Nobody would know how long they've owned it. Nobody would know what mortgages they have, that they just refinanced their home, that they just sold their home. Nobody would know any of that information. So public record gives it to us, but it's not easy to get. It's nationwide. There's 3,400 counties out there. There's, you've got some counties that are online and doing things really good. And there's some counties that are, they don't got enough money, so they just have papers. I still see companies that buy the DAT tape and they send it over to overseas and have it keyed in, and they're doing microfiche, right?
No,
They're
yeah.
just like turning the dial through those things. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. So, Tyler, if folks want to learn more about you or Connected Investors, like, where can they go?
Yeah, go to connectinvestors.com. It's super straightforward. The beauty of it is it's a whole new business. It's a whole new product. So everything has changed. We were a social business that offered the networking and connection. That was a free service that allowed community and forums and all that kind of stuff. And now we've created this software product that is very focused on helping investors find motivated sellers or cash buyers, engage with property owners by getting their contact information and marketing, conducting research and comps and valuations, And then getting funding too. We also actually have the largest network of private hard money lenders that can fund pretty much any deal anywhere in the United States.
Awesome.
So connectinvestors.com, we offer a 7-day trial. Feel free.
Cool. We'll add a link down below for folks that want to come back and reference this as well. So thanks for joining me today. Great to see you. And I'll
Yeah, appreciate it, Mike.
see you again
We'll
in a
see you
few days
soon.
at Investor Fuel. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. All
Yeah,
right, bye.
awesome. Everybody, hope you got some good value from today. At the end of the day, all those lists that you might be pulling or getting access to, just make sure that they're, I guess, they can continue to use the analogy of a recipe. Make sure your ingredients are fresh and that you're combining them in the right order,
Yeah,
basically, or you're working with somebody that knows how to do that. So
exactly.
appreciate you guys a ton. We'll see you on the next show. Thanks for joining us for today's show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing on your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. You can also check out the show's notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and even how to work with me directly one-on-one. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. See you on the next show.